Hello, in this video I'm going to show you how you can host a PAC file within WSS and have the capability to point specific client IP to a specific proxy. So first of all, let's jump into the portal.threadpulse.com, which is the WSS portal, or what's now called the Cloud Swig, and let's go into the PAC file management service. So you can host your PAC files here, like I have hosted this one. However, here you don't have a variable available that would allow you to accomplish the use case of if the user has got IP, let's say 10.10.10.10, go to this particular proxy. Or from a cloud proxy perspective, a better use case probably would be the user is working from the office, today the user is in London office, but for whatever reason we want him to go to a specific cloud VIP. So because the IP of the office is known, is constant, it's a static public IP, when it comes to grabbing this PAC file, you could write logic into the PAC file to achieve that use case. So, but for this, we're not going to be hosting the PAC file here, of course, because like I said, you don't have any variable here to play with. We're going to be leveraging is the exception pages. So here I have got my exception definition, or the current exception.html on my on-prem proxy SG, which I use as a reference device for my universal policy enforcement WSS tenant. Here I've created an exception. I'm going to show you how I created that. I created that from within the management center. So here I created a script which is basically line by line, command line, commands for the proxy, right? So I run these, commands to basically, when I ran it first time, I had to add line 2 to, of course, create it. If you didn't make any changes after that, you need to comment that out, because it already exists and you're going to keep getting a duplicate, error when you execute it. So the exception page, it's within the format tab, where I actually define a PAC file, and within that PAC file I've got this variable here called client that I pointed to one of the proxy SG access log fields, or a CPL I want to say operands, I'm not sure if that's the right term, but basically this is taken, this on the proxy SG gets translated to the IP address of the client that hit the proxy. So this is the means of getting the client IP. And then we of course use this variable here, where I'm saying that if the client IP is this, which is my public IP address, then return the WSS proxy on port 80. If not, if this is else, then return the local proxy. So the question now is, how do we get this into into WSS? So anytime you push a UPE policy to WSS tenant, you don't just push the policy. So when I push this, I didn't just push the policy, I also pushed the exception definition file from the reference device, which is defined here, which is of course the proxy that has got the exception page. If you go into WSS tenant and if you go to policy secure web gateway and you download this file and you open it, you get to see that that file has got your policy plus the exception pages. This is the exception page, right? No, actually, that's my previous attempt. It's this one here. This one, PAC file with IP. This is just a plain, PAC file. And here is our variable. So now we know that that exception page, that PAC file, is now hosted within, within WSS on every proxy. What we need now is a means for the proxy to return in that exception page. So we're talking about an exception page, so we need a block. So in the management center, if we now look at this, I've got one CPL layer that is enforced for universal enforcement, because I don't have any if enforcement here, right? So this will get pushed to WSS as well as the local on-prem proxy. And what we do here, we define this action here, and this action is to basically add a header, and we are adding this header, which is the content type header, which is what the browser needs when a PAC file is served as per the RFCs. We then use this action when an exception, this particular exception page, which is the one that we called, is basically called. That's when we add the header. Now, and here is where we have got a policy to deny with that particular exception page. Now, this is a bogus, URL path that I created for this. Of course, I can't just block the entire domain here, because I will be blocking every single, transaction going to the proxy. I don't want that. I only want to block a URL, a dummy URL that's going to be serving the PAC file, which is, I use, proxy_PAC. So again, the whole process is I configure browser with a PAC file. It hits the WSS proxy. Because I'm using explicit proxy, I have to make sure that that is on bypass as well, on off bypass, because then the first thing I would be hit by is the authentication. I don't want the authentication to happen, so I need to bypass this from authentication. It hits the proxy will go, okay, this is coming from a defined location. I know who the tenant is, therefore I know what the policy is. Oh, okay, I've got this policy to block that, because the request for the PAC file go to this endpoint. The proxy will block it. It will serve the exception page. When the exception is served, the proxy is going to take the client IP from L3 from source, stick it inside that variable. So it's going to populate our client variable in JavaScript. The proxy is then going to hit this exception layer and goes, okay, I hit an exception, I hit this particular exception, therefore I need to run this action, and that action is defined here, which is the one to add the header. One more important thing that I haven't mentioned, of course, this doesn't work unless you also inject this code to 200 inside your exception page. If you leave the default code, status code 443 on the exception page on the proxy, the browsers are not going to store the PAC file. They're going to ignore it. So that's why, if I go quickly to my script here again, I'm doing it here at the very end, right? So I define the format, and then I'm saying that, well, Mr. Proxy, when you serve this exception, don't stick with the default 403 code, change it to 200 code. So all we got left to do now basically is I'm just going to launch, browser, and I'm going to go to some HTTP page, let's do a refresh, and I can see I'm going to the WSS IP address here on port 8080. If I now check what the PAC file looks like, So this is, by the way, what I hard-coded into the browser as a PAC file, right here, right? If we open up the PAC file, as you can see, the variable has been populated by the proxy to my public IP, therefore I matched this, therefore I got this proxy. And if I now just do this, and I do a quick NS lookup on it, right, I'm getting this IP address, which is London WSS, which is the same IP I'm getting here. So I'm going to WSS proxy. So now, because you have got this, what you could do, you could use this, logic to send the users to different, VIPs or different proxies based on your use case. And that concludes the demo. Thank you.